We've got a question here that says, it's very interesting. Can a landlord make it compulsory for a tenant to get vaccinated before taking occupation of the property? So I'm not sure if you wanna run with this one, or Bruno. How do you feel? Cilna.
I want to hear what Bruno says. I'm going to enjoy this. I'm so sad my tea is finished.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So that's completely out of the blue. So, all right, I'm going to go off the cuff and say I can't see how it would be allowable.
Yeah.
So I'm leaning towards the negative, almost like at 90% here. If I had to try and motivate a little bit of upside or positivity there, you look at labor law and the fact that if you are having certain employees in the workspace, there are certain policies that can be put in place regarding vaccinations for the safety of your fellow employees, for working times, working hours, sick leave, stuff like that. So there are certain instances in the work or labor environment where there might be a level of justification for this. So now we try to carry across the same principles into leasing law. If it's just a unit and it's just you, no interaction with anyone else, no chance that that's going to happen, right? Because there's no logical justification for it. You're alone, you're alone. If you start looking at communes, for example, which is on the other end, where people are sharing very, very close spaces, could be a different story, because that does mimic the work environment. And if people aren't being vaccinated and they start posing risks to others, there could now be a balancing of rights between different tenants and between different tenants. It's difficult to imagine how one would go about enforcing this, though, because yeah, sure, because the lease agreement has already been signed. So this would almost be some unilateral act after the fact to say, we're changing our parameters. We also need you to be vaccinated. Yeah, but I suppose one could look at, if your lease is drafted properly, maybe look in the house rules and just see if there's something there that could actually be amended, because it doesn't change your right to occupancy, it just changes your parameters of occupancy and your interaction with other tenants. So maybe in your house rules, there may be something. So yeah, I would say that there might be grounds to make this request, but few and far between, and it would only be in communal spaces. And even there, it's, yeah, I don't have any certainty at all whether it would actually fly or not.
I like your take, because my immediate answer would be no. Because of exactly the same reason. I can't see a logical justification for a landlord to say, I'm not going to rent the property to you if you're not vaccinated. Like, I mean, what? Very, very interesting question. And I didn't even think of the commune living, but I like the way you've made it, sort of linked it up to labor law. I think that was very clever. So I'm definitely with you. I can't see that you would be able to make that compulsory as a landlord, but I agree with you, as with any other principle in law. You have a set of answers, and then there's like this one little outlier situation. Good conversations to have.
But Cilna, just out of curiosity, because now I'm thinking, let's say that there was pure justification for it. Like things got so intense that if you're not vaccinated, you're a risk to everyone, right?
Yes.
What I'm just thinking now, how do you try and implement a policy like that starts delving into like bodily integrity without having it even in the lease agreement to begin with? So now it's after, because I get if it's a new lease, you can maybe say, look, I'm not discriminating against you, but I only lease to people that have been vaccinated. So sorry, right? That I can live with.
Yeah.
But if the person's living there, they're paying their rent, they've signed a lease, has nothing to do with vaccinations, they still have 10 months left on their lease, and now you go and say, look, new rule. where exactly is this new rule? How, and because it's so serious, where you start touching on bodily integrity, it's not just about like, oh, don't keep your milk in that fridge, or, you know, write your name, write your name on the milk. This is like, you know, go and do something that you might morally be against, or maybe you think 5G is the cause of everything. So how would you actually go about enforcing it?
I can't see that you can, Bruno. I think the only way it could be enforced is if it is legislated or by regulation. Say, let's take mask wearing as a very light example of this. It is sort of bodily integrity on the mask wearing. So on a very light version of the conversation, you wouldn't be able to make mask wearing compulsory if your lease agreement doesn't allow for that. But the regulations come in and makes it compulsory, which means in any commune or any other situation, you can say, if you are not wearing your mask, you're not just in contravention of our house rules, you're in contravention genade, of the law. In any emergencies, just switch to Afrikaans. So I think that's, unless it's actually legislated and compulsory in terms of national legislation, I can't see that would be enforceable. I mean, even in the workplace, as much as it could be a situation where you have sort of procedures and protocol that you have to follow. Even well, my dog just joined us. So isn't she cute? This is Amber, everybody. I knew it's going to happen someday, but it's been more than a year. It's the first time. But so I can't see that it could be compulsory to the point where, in the case of workplace, for instance, if you have a constitutional issue in the sense of religion or bodily integrity or whatever the case might be, or your doctor says you're not allowed to get vaccinated, even in that case, where we sit now, your employer can't compel you to get vaccinated. So it's a very, I think it would be a very long shot, Bruno, my opinion, to make it compulsory in renting.
So it's an interesting thing that you say, because in labor law, obviously the solution to the problem would be, okay, cool. So I can't make you get the vaccination, but obviously because of operational requirements, if something were to take place where not having the vaccination causes a risk to your fellow employees and your job has a basic requirement to be present, then if through policy, you could say, well, you know, the operational requirements, your job was to be here. Now you can't actually fulfill your job. And you could start moving towards a sort of a retrenchment or lack of capacity or whatever the case is. So I suppose the answer then with tenants or landlords is, you know, now that we're in this space, we don't know what's happening. Every year we feel like things are improving, COVID's going away, and then it comes back, and we don't actually know what's up and coming. Maybe the suggestion would be take it one step further, start thinking ahead. How would one actually cater for scenarios where you become unsafe to other tenants? Would you be entitled to implement certain rules to say, if you choose not to get vaccinated, I can give you notice? So I can't make you go get the jab, but I'm entitled to give you notice, or something along those lines. It obviously needs more thought, but
yes,
it's worth thinking about, especially if you have communes and something happens and now all of a sudden people, you know, start fighting inside the commune, or everyone starts getting sick and somebody dies. Might not be a bad idea to start, think one step ahead.
Oh, that's an interesting conversation that you guys are having. Look, this may be a silly question, but we were speaking about after the fact, so after you've entered into the lease agreement and then you try to implement the whole vaccine. But now beforehand, let's say, for instance, I've got a tenant, prospective, comes in, views the property and says, really like it. And then I say to them, well, you've got to be vaccinated to live here. And they're like, well, that's discrimination. I don't need to be vaccinated to go anywhere. I just don't believe in it. I know you guys have touched on this briefly, but could I, as the landlord, then deny somebody? And what am I like? Do I run the risk of then eventually someone saying, well, they're discriminating against me, and I don't know, try to sue me, or I don't know, kick me in the shins or something? But I mean, what happens in that situation?
I must say, my opinion is it would be unfair discrimination. If it was a situation where this particular vaccine we're talking about did tick all the boxes of protecting everybody around you, then I must say, I think the law would weigh towards that side. Say, for instance, let's talk about mumps, measles, and rubella, something like that, where you know when somebody has rubella, for instance. I'm specifically taking the conversation away from the COVID vaccine, because that's obviously enough to drive most people in the world to absolute deep debate and argument. But let's say rubella, for instance. And, you know, if you've been vaccinated, you can't get the virus and you can't spread it to other people. Then I can see that there would be a legal justification of making that compulsory as a landlord. But let's take the flu vaccine, for example. You can still get flu. I'm one of those that get the flu vaccine annually, and still I do get flu every now and again, and then I'm just sick for 2 days, and that's why I get the flu vaccine. I hate being sick for 2 weeks. So, but I can still get it and I can still pass it on. So unless it's a type of thing that can really protect other people instead of you, I can see legal justification. But my opinion, and this is my opinion, and I always say, I'll say if something is my opinion. My opinion is that it's not, it can't possibly pose a risk to other people. So the only justification, honestly, that I can see for a landlord to make it compulsory is if you don't want a tenant that's potentially going to be hospitalized or whatever because of COVID. So I think I might be very cautious on my approach to that. But I think on something as unfamiliar or as familiar as, for instance, let's take flu. We've all had flu. We've all had the flu vaccine or not, whatever the case might be. If we can't make that compulsory in the context of even commune living or workspace, I can't see that the COVID vaccine will be any different. I don't know if you share my sentiment, Bruno. We're treating it on a very interesting topic. I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah, no, so look, I do agree with you. It is very gray and very uncertain. So I know the vaccination policies in the workspace are again based on certain assumptions being made that the vaccine does assist insofar, and even if it's small assistance or unproved assistance or possibly only a 20% efficacy when it comes to protecting those around you, I suppose that's the difficulty, is everyone's trying to do the best that they can. And that's always one thing that you need to look at. So if you're trying to do the best that you can, that's one thing. I do agree with Cilna. The problem is there's no set rule on this. So she does have a point. The efficacy of the vaccine insofar as protecting others from contracting it, like, it's uncertain. So we don't know that yet. So in the workspace, people are trying this because they do need to watch out for the employees. In the leasing space, again, I would say that if it's a single unit with no one else around it, it's hands down, you can't, it would be like unfair discrimination to say you can't take the unit just because you haven't had the vaccination. If it's a commune with a bunch of people, there I'd probably take a step back and say I could see it both ways. And as long as the labor law, has methods of, kind of allowing for that vaccination to take place in the workplace, I would say that very similar things would apply to the tenant space, because you are protecting people. And very often, there's an assumption that a landlord is better bargaining power than a tenant, and there's a responsibility. And if you have multiple tenants, the problem is these guys have nowhere to go, and it's your job to kind of actually take care of all of them and make sure that they coexist well. So you almost step into an employer role, and this isn't like legally sound advice. This is more like just an analogy on how I sometimes see the relationships. And so I would keep a very open mind about how to approach that and what you'd be allowed to do and what you wouldn't be allowed to do. And Chris, in your situation, when you're doing it up front, if you could justify a rational reason for doing it, you could probably get away with it.
Oh, that was such an interesting conversation. And obviously we spoke about rubella, smallpox, flu,
Measles.
COVID, measles. So for somebody who just joined
This
this,
is
there-
a law
was there polio?
conversation.
it is the Property Law Alliance and not the medical the Medical Alliance. But such an interesting conversation, guys. And as always, thank you so much for your insights and your knowledge that you share with us and the viewers.
About
to you
law,
guys.
not medicine.
Yeah, about law. Yeah. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And thank you to Cilna, and thank you to Bruno.